you're here at a Libertarian convention. How's it going so far, and what are you planning on talking about today?
Well, we'll be talking about media and some of the major stories in America that media are kind of missing the mark on, and also why they cover stories the way that they do, and hopefully take some questions from the audience, kind of have some interaction there, but give people some insight into, I think, some of the bigger problems we have with corporatized media.
Well, one of the big stories that just came out in the last few days, it was announced about the Silk Road trial, and can you give us a little bit of an update about where we're at with that trial and what happened to Ross Ulbricht?
Yeah, well, Ross Ulbricht is now facing life in prison. That's what he's going to be having to deal with. And I think with Ross's case, what's a little bit different than what most people had expected, at least to the casual observer, is that they weren't really trying him. They were trying the Silk Road. And so there was very little factual evidence that tied him to anything. That doesn't mean that he's innocent, but there was very little evidence that tied him to anything. And instead, most of the trial was spent talking about how evil the Silk Road is, how dangerous Bitcoin is, how terrible the dark web is. And so that's what really was on trial here. It was more of kind of creating this impression of these are the dangerous parts of society right now, and we have to be protected from that. And they made kind of Ross the embodiment, if you will, of those problems.
So how does this play into the libertarian movement, or why should a libertarian be concerned with what happened to him?
Well, I don't know if libertarians should necessarily be concerned about what happened to him, because obviously his case is an individual's case. I think what it really speaks to is how little I think the average American understands a lot of the issues that libertarians are passionate about. And so if anything, I think we need to consider the fact that for the average libertarian trying to speak to people about issues they're concerned about or they're passionate about, that there is a huge language gap there that people don't understand. And so the average person in America does not understand Bitcoin. They do not understand the dark web or deep web. They don't understand a lot of those issues. And so it all sounds dangerous and scary. And we do not have a media that talks about them in any way other than maybe to mention them in connection to organized crime or drugs or something that people perceive as being a bad thing. And so I think more than anything, libertarians should take away from it the fact that there is a major language gap they're going to have to deal with.
So how do we bridge that gap? Is it going to come down to a difference between the mainstream media and the alternative media? Is it really about combating this propaganda, if you will, taking it face on with the alternative media?
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily about combating it. I don't think that new media, and I refer to them more as new, same thing as what you're referring to as alternative, but I don't think new media even has to push back against mainstream media anymore. I think mainstream media is now chasing alternative media. That's what they're doing. They're chasing the new media, trying to figure out why it is that people are talking about the stories they're talking about, covering the stories that they're covering. Social media and new media together is much more powerful right now. If you look at any major story going on in the country, it's being driven by social media and new media.
Do you think the mainstream feels are threatened, or are they going to start to try to adapt and figure out what we're doing right?
Well, I think they're already adapting. I think the first step in adapting for them is just to kind of emulate or copy, right? So find a few sources that they monitor and they say, well, what are these people talking about and what seems to be getting attention? And then they follow along. A great example of that is all these protests that have happened with the Black Lives Matter movement and these police shootings around the country. And I think a lot of networks, they'll now go out and cover any one of them that happens, but they still don't understand what they're covering. They still don't know why it's happening. And so there's a huge communication gap between why the story's being covered and what's actually happening on the streets versus the way they normally cover things. And just for a real quick aside here. So as a great example, I think, is what happened in Baltimore. In Baltimore, we were down there for a week before there were any riots. And there were peaceful protests every single day. CNN was not there. Fox was not there. NBC was not there. They did not cover it. When the riots began, now all of a sudden it was wall-to-wall coverage, right? Because they know how to cover a burning building. They know how to do that really well. And so those were things they're comfortable with. News producers and news editors say, oh, there's a CVS on fire. We know what to do with that. We know how to loop that video and keep showing it. We know how to write copy for that. What they don't know how to write copy for is dealing with the major issues that Baltimore had been plagued with and continues to be plagued with, and that they're still not talking about in the mainstream. in new media, we're talking about those issues, and I think that's where the real discussion is happening. It's not happening on the networks.
Absolutely, and I think what is happening as a result is people are recognizing that they're not necessarily getting the truth from the television set anymore, and they're flocking to the internet and sites like yours to try to get this the other side of the story and get this information. So, for people who are watching today, where can they learn more from you? Because I mean, there's a lot of momentum in the new media. A lot of people want to get involved. For people who want to get involved and people who want to learn more from you, where do they go?
Well, you go to our website, which is truthinmedia.com, truthinmedia.com, and there we have new articles coming up every single day, and we're talking about stories that quite candidly are months, sometimes even years ahead of where mainstream is. It's funny to watch them kind of come around all of a sudden to things that we've been talking about that seem strange. And so, yeah, we're covering amazing stories there. We have an amazing group of writers who put stuff together and contributors who are part of the site. But I encourage people to check it out and to just follow what we're doing, put it into your news feed, because it's definitely worth it.
I think it's an incredible sign of the times to see something like that flourishing the way it is. So keep up the great work. We hope to see more from you very soon. Once again, thank you very much.
Thanks, Dan.